My name is Kelly Jewett. I'm 32 years old, and on the night my relationship quietly died, I was convinced I was about to create the most romantic memory we had ever shared. It was our 5th anniversary, 5 years of commitment, 5 years of sacrifices, 5 years of believing that love, even imperfect love, could be strengthened with effort. I had no idea that while I was preparing a surprise to celebrate us, my boyfriend Liam Hart was in our living room, telling his friends that settling for me had been his biggest mistake. Earlier that day, I left work 3 hours early under the excuse of a family priority. Technically, it wasn't a lie. My heart was family, or at least it had been. I had spent months planning the perfect gift, a custom-designed platinum ring with a sapphire that matched his eyes, and 2 first-class tickets to Greece tucked inside my purse. Liam had always talked about wanting to travel, but never having the time or stability. I thought giving him that dream would show him how deeply I believed in us, and in the future we could build together. I parked 2 blocks away so he wouldn't see my car. I wanted the surprise to be absolute. The evening air was crisp, and I walked with that mixture of nerves and excitement only people in love understand. When I let myself in through the back door, the faint sounds of laughter drifted toward me from the living room. Tuesdays were wine nights with his friends Jessica, loud and messy, Sarah, quiet and thoughtful, and occasionally a rotating extra from his office. Usually I stayed late at work to give him space with them, but tonight I wanted nothing more than to see his face light up when he realized I had come home early for him. The house was dimly lit candles glowing along the hallway. Everything felt warm, familiar, and safe. I moved slowly toward the living room, planning to jump into the conversation and surprise him with the box I had hidden in my bag. I was still smiling when I heard my name, Kelly. "Come on," Liam said, an irritated laugh in his voice. "She's not going to care if I'm home late." I froze instantly. The tone was wrong, dismissive in a way I had never heard him use about me. Jessica giggled. "She seems like she types up an itinerary for brushing her teeth." Liam snorted, sounding far more drunk than I expected. "She's safe. That's the word. Kelly is safe. She's basically a Honda Civic. Reliable, predictable, gets you where you need to go. Nothing exciting." I went still, my hand still wrapped around the strap of my purse. The ring box felt like it doubled in weight. Sarah spoke next, her voice low. "Liam, she's good to you. You know that." "Oh, I know," Liam replied quickly. "That's the problem. She's too good. Pays the rent, pays the car insurance, pays half the bills without complaining. Stability is great, but it's not exciting. Not like—" He lowered his voice, but not enough. "Not like Ava." The name hit me like someone had pressed a cold hand to my spine. Ava, the coworker. He mentioned in passing the one he said had a talent for presentations, the one he described as fun. I had thought nothing of it. Now I understood I should have. Jessica perked up. "Ava, the one with the green eyes. She is gorgeous." "Exactly," Liam said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. "She's electric. You stand next to her and feel alive. Not like stability and routine. She's the kind of woman who makes you rethink your life." The silence that followed was thick, embarrassed, heavy. I wanted one of them, any of them, to stop him, to tell him he was being cruel, to remind him that I loved him, that I supported him, that I'd spent 5 years choosing him every single day. Instead, Jessica laughed again. "So basically, you settled." Liam didn't deny it. If Ava actually made a move, I don't know if I'd have the willpower to say no. Honestly, if I could go back to my late 20s, I wouldn't have gotten serious so fast. I jumped into something comfortable because I wasn't ready to grow. Kelly was a good bet, a safe bet. It felt like being punched in the chest. I stood in the dark hallway, unable to move, unable to breathe. I had imagined so many versions of tonight, but never this one. Never the version where the man I loved casually admitted to his friends that I was a placeholder, a convenient safety net, a boring chapter he regretted committing to. Then I heard the worst line of all. He poured more wine and said with a softness that felt sharper than any scream, "She's a stepping stone. I needed her at the time. But that doesn't mean she's the person I'm supposed to end up with." My vision blurred. The ring, the tickets, the plans. All of it felt ridiculous now, like props in someone else's desperate story. I waited. I waited for him to say he didn't mean it. I waited for one of his friends to challenge him. But the conversation rolled on, laughter and chatter filling the air as if he hadn't just dismantled my entire reality sentence by sentence. I didn't confront them. I didn't walk into the living room demanding answers. A strange, numb clarity spread through my chest, an instinctive calm that didn't feel like strength, but something colder, older, like self-preservation kicking in. Quietly, I backed away from the doorway, then the kitchen, then the back door. I left the house and stepped into the cold night air, feeling like a ghost slipping out of her own life. I walked to my car without crying, without shaking, without planning. I was simply empty. Once inside, I stared at the glow of the house from down the street. My home, our home, a place I suddenly realized I had been carrying alone. I started the engine and drove to the luxury hotel I'd booked for our weekend. When the receptionist asked, "Will your partner be joining you later?" I shook my head. No, just me. That night, the silence of the presidential suite felt too soft, too luxurious, too peaceful for what had happened. I didn't open the ring box. I didn't take out the tickets. I simply sat by the window looking down at the city lights and tried to understand how a life can collapse in a single overheard sentence. I didn't cry until much later, long after the shock faded, long after the numbness cracked. But even in the middle of the deepest heartbreak of my life, a single thought echoed in the back of my mind. He didn't break me, he revealed himself. And that was the beginning of everything that came next. I woke up in the presidential suite with the kind of aching clarity that only follows emotional devastation. The room was too beautiful for what had happened. Crisp white sheets, soft golden light, filtering through the curtains, the faint hum of city traffic 30 floors below. For a moment, I let myself pretend I was just a woman on vacation, not someone whose relationship had quietly hemorrhaged the night before. But the truth seeped in like cold water. Liam had dismantled 5 years of my love in less than 5 minutes, and I had listened from the shadows like an uninvited guest at my own funeral. I didn't turn on my phone yet. I wanted a little more silence before the inevitable storm. Instead, I ordered room service eggs, fruit, black coffee, and forced myself to eat something, even though my appetite was gone. Only after the tray was cleared did I finally pick up my phone. It vibrated violently the moment it turned on, buzzing across the nightstand like it was trying to run away. Notifications flooded my screen calls, texts, voice messages from Liam, from Jessica, even from Liam's mother. The barrage was relentless. 14 missed calls from Liam, 9 text messages, 3 calls from Jessica, 1 voicemail from his mom. The text began around midnight and spiraled from irritation to confusion to panic. "Where are you?" "The girls just left. Are you at the office?" "Seriously, Kelly. This isn't funny. It's our anniversary. Answer me. I'm getting worried. Jessica drove by your work. Your car isn't there. What is going on, Kelly? Answer the phone. Are you doing this on purpose? Come home." My chest tightened. Every word confirmed the truth. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't remorseful. He was simply angry that I had disrupted the routine of the woman he took for granted. Then, buried among the notifications, I saw one message that made me sit up straighter. Instagram request from Sarah, Liam's quiet friend, the one who'd tried to defend me last night. I opened it hesitantly. "Sarah Kelly, I don't know if you'll read this, but I saw your car leaving last night. I think you heard everything. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him. I didn't, and I regret it. He's been pacing all morning, calling everyone. He doesn't know what he did, not really. But you weren't crazy. You heard what you heard. And honestly, you did the right thing walking away. He doesn't deserve someone as loyal as you." A rush of validation and heartbreak collided inside me. Sarah had always been the observant one, the one who noticed things quietly. Her message wasn't dramatic or performative. It was honest. And it was the confirmation I needed. I didn't reply. I didn't want to drag her into the emotional fallout of the mess Liam had created. Instead, I opened my banking app and stared at the screen for several seconds before acting. Liam had a supplementary card on my account. It was meant for groceries and emergencies, but most of the charges were wine takeout and Uber rides he didn't feel like paying for. My thumb hovered over the disable card button for a moment. Then I pressed it. A single click. Done. Next, I transferred half of the money from our joint savings account, my half, exactly what I had put in down to the dollar, into my personal account. I didn't touch his portion. I wasn't trying to punish him or steal anything. I just finally understood the truth he had been saying behind my back. I was the stability. I was the foundation. Without me, his lifestyle didn't function. And I was done funding the person who saw me as a stepping stone. 10 minutes later, as if sensing the shift, my phone rang again, this time from Liam directly. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something inside me wanted to hear the tone of his voice, wanted to know what he sounded like when the illusion he had built around me finally cracked. I answered, Kelly. His voice was already strained, panicked. Where are you? What is going on? I woke up and you were just gone. I know, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. It was unnervingly calm. Look, if this is because I went a little overboard last night, I'm sorry. Jessica was being loud. We were all just blowing off steam. You can't seriously be mad about that. I closed my eyes. I heard everything, Liam. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. The kind of silence that tells you a person is scrambling for a lie and realizing they don't have one. What are you talking about? He asked weakly. I was in the hallway, I said. I came home early to surprise you. I heard what you said about me. About Ava. About settling. About me being safe. Predictable. A stepping stone. The line stayed dead quiet for 4 seconds. I counted them. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaking. Kelly, no, God, no. You weren't supposed to hear that. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything I said. That's not fair, he tried to argue. What's not fair, I cut in, is listening to the man I love talk about me like I'm some temporary placeholder in his life. I could hear him breathing harder. We've been together 5 years. You can't just walk out over a stupid conversation. You're being emotional. That word emotional hit me with a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. I wasn't emotional. I was done. I canceled your card, I said simply, and I'm moving my half of the savings. The lease ends in 30 days. You should start planning. You canceled what, Kelly? What are you doing? You can't just uproot everything. I'm not uprooting anything, I replied. I'm just stepping off the stone you built your life on. He inhaled sharply like I'd slapped him. Please don't do this. We can fix this. We can talk, Kelly, please. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even let my voice raise an inch. There's nothing left to fix. Then I hung up. I sat in the silence of the hotel room for a long time afterward, holding my phone loosely in my hand, waiting for the pain to hit, waiting for guilt or regret to wash over me. But nothing came. Instead, something else settled into my chest, something steady and quiet. Relief. The kind of relief that comes when you finally stop carrying a weight you didn't realize was crushing you. I hadn't planned any of this. I hadn't prepared to walk away. But once I did, I knew one thing for certain. Leaving wasn't the mistake. Staying had been. The days after I left weren't dramatic explosions or loud confrontations. They were a quiet unraveling, like tugging one loose thread and watching an entire sweater collapse in my hands. Except this time the sweater wasn't mine. It was Liam's life, stitched together with my money, my stability, my emotional labor. And now that I wasn't there to hold it all in place, everything began slipping apart faster than even I expected. I kept communication minimal emails, only strictly about the apartment lease and the logistics of separating our finances. He hated it. I could tell by the tone of his replies, frantic, emotional, and sometimes desperate. But every time his name appeared in my inbox, I felt a strange, growing distance, like reading messages from someone I used to know in another lifetime. Meanwhile, I threw myself into rebuilding my own routines. I woke up early, went to the gym before work, and met with a trainer who didn't care about my breakup, but cared a lot about my posture, my breathing, my form. The physical burn was grounding. Pain that made sense. Pain with purpose. Within weeks, I felt my body changing, stronger, sharper, leaner. My reflection in the mirror no longer looked like a woman carrying a man on her back. I looked like someone carrying herself. Work surprisingly also flourished. Maybe because I no longer used my energy buffering Liam from life. Maybe because heartbreak pried open something inside me, a courage I didn't know I had. I pitched a new proposal to my department head, something bold and high risk that the old version of me would have been too cautious to attempt. They not only approved it, they gave me the lead. Whatever you're doing lately, Kelly, my boss said one afternoon, keep doing it. You're sharper than ever. I smiled politely, thinking it's easy to be sharp when you aren't being dulled every day. But while my life was taking shape, Liam's was starting to fall apart. I didn't hear it from him, of course. He wasn't the type to admit weakness directly. I heard it from the quiet corners around him, coworkers of his, who knew me, friends, who still followed me on social media, and eventually from Sarah. 3 weeks after I left, she asked if we could meet for coffee. I hesitated but agreed. Sarah wasn't part of the problem. If anything, she had been the only person in that living room who seemed uncomfortable with what Liam said. When she walked into the cafe, she gave me a soft, apologetic smile. You look good, she said quietly. Really good. Thank you. She sat down, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. I guess I should just tell you what you already figured out. He's not doing well. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure yet if I cared. He tried to pursue Ava. She winced as if the words themselves were painful. He thought she'd be excited he was single now. He made a move on her. And I asked, bracing myself for anger I didn't want to feel. She didn't take him seriously. Apparently, she said he was a fun coworker, but not someone she would ever date. She ghosted him after 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That was all he lasted with the woman he had described as electric, the woman he would have left me for without hesitation. Sarah continued. He took it pretty hard. Started showing up to work late. Started relying more on Jessica and Ben for emotional support. You know how Jessica is. She likes being needed until she doesn't. I knew that dynamic well. Jessica adored chaos but hated responsibility. So he's staying with her now, Sarah added, lowering her voice. On her couch. They're already fighting. A lot. I took a sip of my coffee. Not triumph. Not gloating. Just clarity. The world was simply rearranging itself into the shape it always should have taken. Without your financial support, Sarah said. He's struggling. He didn't realize how much you covered. He's panicking now that he has to handle bills on his own. I nodded slowly. It didn't surprise me. Knowing it still stung, but the sting felt distant, dulled by time and progress. Sarah hesitated again. Kelly, I know you don't need to hear this, but you did the right thing. And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you that night. I really am. I know, I said softly, and I appreciate you saying that. She gave me a long, sympathetic look. He's trying to pretend he didn't wreck things. But he did. Everyone sees it now. It was strange the relief I felt wasn't petty or vindictive. It was quiet, almost peaceful, as if the universe was simply confirming that the version of Liam I overheard was the real one, not the man I had loved, not the partner I believed in. Hearing from someone else that his downfall had nothing to do with me finally severed the last invisible thread tying me to him. After we said goodbye, I didn't look back, and I didn't check his social media or ask about him again. His life was no longer mine to worry about. Mine, meanwhile, was expanding. I started saying yes to invitations I'd once declined. Group dinners, evening yoga, a trivia night my coworkers dragged me to. I wasn't looking for anything or anyone, but the space in my life where Liam used to sit felt surprisingly easy to fill with things that nourished me instead of drained me. People noticed my changes too, men especially. I wasn't used to being looked at like that, like someone interesting, someone vibrant. It felt unfamiliar but not unwelcome. One man in particular, a pediatric surgeon from my gym named David, began talking to me after morning sessions. At first, just small conversations, music travel, work routines, but gradually the tone shifted. There was a warmth in his eyes, a subtle interest, but no pressure. He treated me like an equal, not a crutch. It was refreshing, almost startling. I wasn't ready for anything romantic, not yet. But the realization that I could be wanted by someone grounded and confident, it did something to me. It reminded me that Liam's opinion of my worth was never the truth. It was only his limitation. And he wasn't part of my story anymore. Still, the irony of it all didn't escape me. While I was rebuilding myself from the ground up, Liam was sinking slowly into the life he had tried so hard to avoid. The man who once mocked stability was now desperate for the security he once took for granted. And the woman he called a stepping stone had finally stepped forward without him. 5 months after I walked out of the house that no longer felt like mine, I had settled into a life that finally did. My days had rhythm. My nights were peaceful. I went to the gym at dawn, led major projects at work, cooked real meals, slept without anxiety, and existed without feeling like a background character in my own life. I wasn't healed completely, but I was whole enough to recognize myself again. And then Liam tried to come back. It began with a disruption in the one place I never expected him to appear, my work inbox. The subject line was simple, please read. The sender was worse, Liam Hartwork email. He had bypassed every block barrier and boundary by sending it to my professional address. I stared at the notification for nearly a minute before opening it, not out of curiosity, but because I knew ignoring it would invite more intrusions. Liam, when desperate, didn't disappear. He found cracks. The email was long, but the tone was familiar. Apology dipped in self-pity, regret, tangled with justification. Kelly, I know you hate me. I know I ruined everything. I've been thinking about what I said that night and how stupid it was. Ava was a mistake. I was having some kind of midlife crisis early, I guess. Jessica made me feel like I was missing out, and I let her talk me into thinking things I shouldn't have. I miss you. I miss us. I miss our routines, our mornings, the way you make coffee, the way you laugh. I know what I said hurt you, but people say stupid things when they're trying to impress friends. I didn't mean those things. I was just trying to fit in. I want to fix this. Please. I'm staying on Jessica's couch and it smells like cat pee. I feel like my entire life is falling apart and you're the only person who ever kept me grounded. Please give me 10 minutes. Just 10. I need to see you. Liam. I read it twice. Not because it moved me, but because I wanted to understand the structure of manipulation he was trying to rebuild. Every line was carefully constructed to trigger the version of me he used to know, the Kelly who forgave too easily, who explained away his behavior, who believed that love meant absorbing whatever wounds he inflicted. The new me did not flinch. I closed my laptop and stared out the window of my office. The city was humming with life traffic below skyscrapers reflecting the afternoon sun, people moving with purpose. I realized that in the months since leaving Liam, I had built more emotional strength than I had in the 5 years we were together. But I also knew something else. If I didn't give him closure, he would never stop. He'd keep finding ways to guilt me, push into my space, and resurrect the past. Not because he missed me, because he missed the safety net. So I replied with a single sentence. Starbucks on 4th and Main. Tuesday. 6 p.m. 10 minutes. That was all he got. When Tuesday arrived, I dressed not to impress, but to armor myself. A fitted navy blazer, tailored pants, clean hair, minimal makeup. I looked like someone in control of her life, someone with boundaries, someone he had never seen before. I walked into the cafe at exactly 6. The place was warm, packed with people on laptops, the hum of steam wands, and quiet conversation surrounding me. And there he was in the corner, hunched, slightly clutching a latte with both hands, like it was the only warmth he had left. The contrast was startling. This wasn't the confident, charming, slightly arrogant Liam I had once loved. This was a man worn down by consequences he never imagined he'd face. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and there was a tension around his mouth that only comes from a long string of sleepless nights. When he saw me, his eyes widened. He stood quickly, almost knocking his drink over. Kelly, he breathed, stepping forward as if he expected a hug. I didn't move. I kept my hands loosely at my sides. He froze mid-step, then awkwardly sat back down. I took the seat across from him, placing my phone on the table next to a water bottle. You look, he swallowed. You look incredible. I'm not here to talk about my appearance, I said calmly. He winced. Right, of course. For a moment, he just stared at me, eyes darting between mine and the table as if looking at me too directly was painful. I don't know where to start, he said softly. You asked for 10 minutes, I replied. Start there. He inhaled shakily. I messed up, Kelly. I really messed up. I was immature and drunk and trying to impress people who don't even matter. I was stupid. I took you for granted. I didn't realize how much of my life depended on you until you weren't there anymore. I let him talk. I wasn't there to soothe him. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Ava meant nothing. Nothing. She never wanted something real. She left. She just left. You're the person who actually stood by me. You're the one who cared. I tilted my head slightly. Liam, do you hear yourself? You're not asking for me. You're asking for the version of your life that was stable and subsidized. That's not true, he said quickly. It is, I replied. You don't miss me. You miss comfort. He looked genuinely wounded. I miss you. I miss the way you made me feel safe, understood. You miss the way I made your life feel, not the way I made you feel. The truth landed like a slap. He blinked hard, his jaw tightening. 5 years, Kelly. That has to mean something. It does, I said. It means I gave 5 years to someone who wanted excitement more than partnership, someone who called me predictable, someone who fantasized about another woman 2 rooms away from me. He covered his face with his hands. I was an idiot. I was trying to fit in with Jessica. I was insecure. I said things I didn't mean. But you meant them enough to say them, I replied, and you meant them enough to believe them. He looked at me desperately. Can't we try again? Please, I swear I'll be better. I swear I'll change. For the first time since sitting down, I leaned forward slightly. Liam, the night I left you said you could do better than me. He froze. I thought about that a lot, I continued. And after 5 months of rebuilding myself, I realized something important. Hope flickered in his eyes, pathetic, bright, fragile. You were right. His face collapsed. But so was I. I continued quietly. I can do better than someone who mocked me, someone who used me, someone who only realized my value when he lost the benefits of my presence. He shook his head, eyes wet. Please. Kelly, don't do this. I stood up. Your 10 minutes are over. He scrambled to his feet. I have nowhere to go. Jessica is kicking me out. I'm behind on everything. I'm losing control. I met his gaze without flinching. You wanted a life without stability, I said softly. Now you have it. I walked past him, feeling his desperation cling to me like cold air. But it didn't pull me back. It didn't weaken me. It didn't even bruise the calm inside me. Outside, the evening air was crisp. The streetlights were warm. My car engine purred when I started it. As I pulled out of the lot, my phone lit up. A message from David, the surgeon. Free tonight. I found a wine bar with terrible service but amazing food. Want to check it out with me? I smiled, not because of him specifically, but because the message reminded me of something simple and profound. My life had space again. Not for Liam, not for the past, but for possibility. As I drove away from the Starbucks where Liam had begged for another chance, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't even feel angry. What settled in my chest was quieter, gentler, like the slow exhale of someone who finally put down a heavy suitcase they didn't realize they'd been carrying for years. The city lights blurred past the windows as the sun dipped beyond the skyline. My phone buzzed again, with David's name lighting up, but I let it go for a moment. I needed space to process the emotional weight of what I had just done. For the first time since that awful night, I had faced Liam without trembling. I had looked directly at the man I had once believed I would marry, and I hadn't recognized him. Maybe I never truly knew him. Maybe he never truly knew me. And maybe that was the quiet tragedy of our entire relationship. By the time I reached my apartment, the tension in my shoulders had evaporated. I stepped inside, turned on the lights, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the forced, polite peace of pretending everything was fine. Real peace. The kind that settles into the bones and stays. I set down my keys, changed into something comfortable, and sat on the couch with my legs tucked under me. My phone buzzed again. David, still free. I promise the wine makes up for the chaos. I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a fluttering, infatuated kind of smile. Not a rebound kind, but a knowing one. The kind that says I'm okay. I'm ready to rejoin the world. I typed back, give me 30 minutes. Before heading out, I paused by the mirror. It wasn't vanity. It was acknowledgement. I looked at myself, not just the physical transformation, but the internal one. This version of me stood taller, breathed deeper, and carried a confidence I didn't have when my life revolved around holding up a man who refused to stand beside me. I didn't need anyone to validate me, but I wasn't afraid of letting someone try. When I arrived at the wine bar, David was waiting outside with a grin. Good timing. The waiter just warned me, half the menu is unavailable, which means it's going to be an adventure. Perfect, I said, laughing. I could use an adventure that doesn't involve emotionally unstable men. Fair, he said, holding the door open for me. Tonight I promise the only chaos will be the service. Inside the place was dim, warm, and filled with the chatter of people who weren't carrying heartbreak in their pockets. We ordered a bottle of red wine the waiter recommended reluctantly and talked about everything except relationships, travel food, what we'd do if we won the lottery, the strange crimes committed by medical residents in his hospital. It wasn't a date. It wasn't an attempt to replace Liam. It was simply two adults enjoying each other's company. But sometime between the second glass of wine and the waiter's apologies for the missing dessert menu, I realized something profound. I hadn't thought about Liam once. Not his voice, not his betrayal, not his tears, not his downfall. He had become irrelevant not because I forced him out, but because life had naturally expanded around the space he once occupied. As David walked me to my car, later the night air cool against my skin, he paused for a moment. I'm glad you came out, he said. You seem lighter. I am, I admitted. Good. You deserve to feel that way. He stepped back so I could open the door. Get home safe. Text me if the elevator in your building traps you again. I laughed. I'll call you if it does, mostly because you're the only person I know who could talk me through a malfunctioning lift without panicking. He gave a soft nod before turning to head toward his own car. There was no pressure, no lingering expectation. Just a good night, easy and warm. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed and let the quiet settle. My phone lit up with a final, desperate email from Liam. Please, don't shut me out. I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I need you. I stared at it for a long moment, then I deleted it without replying. Not out of cruelty, out of closure. After everything he had done, every word, every betrayal, every attempt to reclaim me. Not out of love, but out of fear of being alone, I finally understood the fundamental truth I had been avoiding for years. Liam didn't need me. He needed the version of himself he pretended to be when I was around. And I didn't need him either. What I needed, what I finally chose, was myself. I turned off my phone, climbed into bed, and let the darkness wrap around me like a soft blanket. For the first time since I stood in that hallway overhearing my own heartbreak, I slept without dreams. No fear, no doubt, no shadows. Just rest. When morning light filtered through the curtains, I woke with a calm certainty. I wasn't haunted by the past anymore. I didn't hate Liam. I didn't love Liam. I didn't wish him pain. I didn't wish him happiness. I simply didn't think about him at all. And that more than revenge, more than closure, more than justice was the real victory.